Welcome back, everyone. Brett Kennedy here, Juice Feaster on all the social media platforms, and I'm on a mission to cleanse, regenerate, and transform 1 million people with the magical powers of juicing. In today's video, we're going to review two hugely popular centrifugal style juicers that are on the market, out in the marketplace for you if you're looking for a juicer. Today we're going to review the Aicook AMR 526, and we're going to compare it to the Breville Juice Fountain Plus JE98XL. As I mentioned, both of these juicers are hugely popular on Amazon. The Aicook AMR 526 has over 8,000 reviews with a very positive review status mark of 4.5 stars. And at the same time, the Breville Juice Fountain has over 10,000 reviews, also sitting at 4.5 star average. And so very solid, very popular juicers out there in the marketplace. One main difference between these two juicers, the Aicook AMR 526 comes in at the time of this filming at $49, compared to the Breville Juice Fountain at $149. So what I'd like to do is just see, is it worth the extra money for the Breville Juice Fountain JE98XL compared to the Aicook AMR 526. Both of these juicers are made in China, so let's just take a look at them and see how they stack up against each other. So we're gonna take these juicers apart, look at how each one of them compare to one another, and then I've got some produce here, some fruits and vegetables that we're gonna run through each of the juicers. I've got 250 grams of blood oranges, 250 grams of carrots, 250 grams of apples, and 250 grams of celery that I have pre-weighed out on a produce scale. So basically 1,000 grams of produce that we're going to run through each one of these juicers. We're going to take a look at the yield, we're going to look at the pulp to see how dry the pulp is, we're going to listen to the noise level on these juicers, and just see how they stack up against each other. So let's take a look. One of the first things that we can notice about the Aicook AMR 526 compared to the Breville JE98 Juice Fountain is the size. The size of the Aicook, I would say, is maybe just a little over half the size of the Breville Juice Fountain. So if you are living in a tight space, you're in a smaller apartment, in a condo where you don't have a lot of countertop space, perhaps a smaller unit like the Aicook AMR 526 could be a good choice for you. Both of them, I think, are sized that they would fit underneath cabinets as, from the countertop height up to the cabinet. So I don't think there's any problem there with the Breville, but in terms of the footprint that each one of these takes up, the Aicook AMR 526 is a much more compact package. Now, why is that? Well, I think the main reason is the motor on the AMR 526 is a smaller motor. So that makes a smaller juicer. So we've got a 400 watt motor on the AMR 526 compared to an 850 watt motor on the Breville. So is that larger motor worth it? I'm not really sure. We're going to take a look and see how they do as we juice through the produce. One of the things that is definitely an advantage for centrifugal style juicers like each of these juicers are, is that they have the ability to make a lot of juice really quickly. So both of these juicers have larger chutes on the top that you can drop larger pieces of produce into, which means that you don't actually have to spend as much time chopping up the produce. So if time is of the essence to you and you feel like that's one of the barriers to making juice in your own daily juicing habit, then centrifugal styles are definitely a way that you can make a lot of juice more quickly than the other style juicer, which is a slow masticating style juicer. Those juicers take a little bit longer time. They tend to have a little bit better yield, and the nutrient extraction is a little bit higher on those juicers typically because of the way they juice fruits and vegetables. But if time is a major factor, then centrifugal styles are a good option. So comparing the vertical produce feed chute on each of these juicers, they both claim that they have a 3-inch opening. As we look at these produce pusher tools, we can see that they're, obviously the Breville's a larger size, vertically compared to the Aicook. But also when we look at them side by side, we can see that the Breville has a little bit larger circumference push tool compared to the Aicook. So I actually took a tape measure and measured the opening, and the Breville does indeed have an exact 3-inch opening for its feed chute, whereas the Aicook has a 3-inch from outside edge to outside edge, but for the opening itself, where the produce actually goes down in, it's just a little bit over 2.5 inches. So it's not a full 3 inches. Now, I don't know whether that makes a huge amount of difference to you. I don't think really either one of these you're going to be able to drop whole larger apples into, or a whole larger beet. Those are going to take a little bit of chopping, so I'm not so sure that a full 3 inches is any more advantageous than a 2.5-inch opening. But that's for you to decide for sure. So moving on from the feed chute, let's take a look at the internal parts of each of these juicers. So both of these open very similarly, and we have a top portion here, which is where we feed the produce through. I'll get each of these off. And fairly similar, you can see the difference in the feed tube opening. Not a whole lot of difference there, and for all intents and purposes, very similar. They're both clear plastic so that you can actually see what's going on in your juicer. If there's any clogging or anything like that, the pulp is building up too much, then you can actually see through this clear plastic and know what's going on. So that's a benefit for both of those juicers. So then, let's talk about how centrifugal juicers actually extract the juice. The only difference is the size of the actual component that does the work. So here on the Breville, I'll get both of these taken loose here. Both popped in pretty much the same way. So we can see here, this is how centrifugal style juicers extract the juice. As you drop the produce in the bottom of each one of these tools, there are small teeth that basically grind up the produce as this basket spins incredibly quickly, okay? And as it spins, it chops up the produce, extracts the juice, and spins the juice through this fine mesh screen in a centrifugal or a spinning manner. So both of these juicers work exactly the same way, but we can see the basket on the Breville is a larger size than the Aicook AMR 526. So I'm not sure if that is going to make a huge difference. We'll see as we juice, but essentially the same, just one being a little bit larger than the other. They're both stainless steel. They both look to be about the same pore size of fine mesh screen. So for all intents and purposes, very similar. Then, being that each of these juicers are slightly different size, the juice bowl is going to be a little bit different size for each. So the juice bowl is actually where the juice collects. As the juice collects, it runs out this spigot here on the side and comes out into your juice collection pitcher. So each of these have that same functionality there. Both are clear. You can see exactly what's going on inside these bowls. Both of them have about the same size port opening. So, really not a whole lot of difference between the two there. They both have locking mechanisms that when the juicer is completely put together, this is a safety mechanism that prevents the juicer from being turned on to prevent the blades from spinning while there's not a cover over it. So that's a great advantage there for both of those, safety factor. And if we look at the pitcher sizes, this is a major difference that we can see between the two, we've got a 400 milliliter or just about a half liter pitcher to collect the juice for the AMR 526, and we've got about 1,000 milliliter or a liter pitcher for the Breville juice fountain. So about double the size for the Breville. So as the juicer extracts the juice from the produce, the pulp is pushed out into a pulp collection vessel, and for both of these juicers, they both have that component. They're not a whole lot different in size, but obviously the Breville is a little bit larger, so you wouldn't have to empty it quite as often as you would the Aicook AMR 526. So as we have taken these juicers apart, really about the only difference that I can see between them is size. The size of the motor, the size of the components. Really, for all intents and purposes, they are exactly the same. The Aicook is just a little bit smaller version of the Breville. Now that we've taken a look at the juicers in terms of all of their components and how they come apart and what's involved with all of that, let's put them back together and see how loud each one of these juicers are and take a look at the different speed options that each one of them has. So let's put together the Breville here. Pretty quick to put both of these juicers back together. Very simple juicers. These juicer styles have been around a long time, so it's no wonder that there are so many reviews of these juicers because they've been in the marketplace for so long. Let's put the basket in there, back together, each one of our pushers in. Okay, let's listen to the sound for each one of these juicers as we turn them on. With the Aicook AMR 526, we have 3 speed options. One option is basically a function where you hold on the on button, and as soon as you let go, it shuts off. So similar to a lot of food processors out there who have a function where you can hold it on, and as soon as you release that, it's a pulse option. So this has a pulse option on this juicer. I don't think I've ever seen that on any other juicer before, so that's kind of a new component and one that could be useful if you're just juicing a little bit and you don't feel like you need to turn it on all the way. So let's hear what that sounds like. And that pulse option is up to full speed. Let's see what it sounds like. Not too bad, a little bit of noise, but not too bad. So now let's take a listen to the low speed for the Aicook. The low speed, according to Aicook, is best for softer fruits or greens or herbs. So let's open up to speed number 1. And then they have a high speed, which is for harder roots and fruits. So peas, carrots, harder apples, etc. That's a little bit of noise, but you know, not too bad. Alright, so that's the Aicook in terms of its noise level. Now, similarly, the juice fountain has a couple of speed options, a low and a high. It does not have the pulse option where you can turn it on and hold it just with your finger and then release and shut it off. So let's take a look at the low speed. Make sure I'm getting on the low speed. It's up. So pretty similar to the Aicook, maybe a little bit quieter in the low speed. So I have a high speed. The high speed is definitely a lot louder than the So I would say that the low speed on the Breville is a little bit quieter than the Aicook, but the high speed is definitely louder than the Aicook. Let's try that again. Definitely a little bit louder. So after listening to the noise level there It's safe to say that the Aicook is a little bit quieter juicer, so if you're living in an apartment situation with roommates and you're worried about noise, or perhaps you're traveling and you're taking this with you and you're staying in an Airbnb or a hotel for work, the Aicook would be a little bit better option, especially at the high speed in terms of noise. So that takes care of looking at each one of these juicers and their components and the noise level and all the aspects of each one of these juicers. Let's run some produce through each one of them and see how they do. We've got 250 grams each of blood oranges, carrots, apples, and celery. Let's run them through. I'll be right back and we'll take a look at the yield and how dry the pulp is on each one of these juicers. Be right back. All right, we have both of the produce juiced here. Both of them performed really well. I feel like that even though the smaller motor on the AMR 526, I didn't really see any indication that the motor was bogged down or any issues with the produce being run through. Even the hard carrots or the very fibrous celery, I didn't see any issues with that. It juiced everything really well, which was nice. The one thing I did do mistakenly, I wasn't paying attention. The juicer was juicing really well, and I overflowed this pitcher a little bit, so this amount isn't exactly correct. It's a little bit lower than it should be. I'm not exactly sure how much juice I lost there, but I lost a little bit, maybe an ounce or so. Comparatively, the Breville juiced really well. I did feel like that a little bit bigger chute was a little easier to drop produce into, but really not that big of a deal. Let's pour out the juice from the Breville and see actually how much juice we got from it. So let's see how close we are here. I'm going to take this off to get the foam out as well. So it looks like, actually looking at the level of each one of these juicers, we have more juice that was made on the AMR 526. I'm going to pour them out into measuring cups to see that exact amount. Okay, one of the additional tests that I like to do when comparing juicers is to see if there's any difference in the amount of pulp that each one of the juicers leaves. So as we measure out the juice, I'm also going to pour the juices through a fine mesh strainer to see if there's any difference in the amount of measurable pulp, just objectively to look and see how much pulp each one of these juicers leaves in the juice. Personally, for me, I like a more pulp-free juice, so kind of up to you. Some juicers leave a little bit more pulp, others are completely pulp-free. So let's see how these stack up. A couple of KitchenAid fine mesh strainers here. Let's pour the juice from the Aicook through the strainer. Give that a little tap. Now you can definitely see that there is indeed pulp left over, for sure. Let's see how it stacks up against the Breville. So looking at the two of those, I would say that there's probably a little bit more pulp in the AMR 526 strainer here, if you compare on this side compared to the Breville. So not a huge amount of difference. Both of them have a fair amount of pulp left over, but really just a kind of a personal preference as to whether you like a pulpier juice or more of a pulp-free juice. So let's look at the volume of juice that each one of these juicers made. So with the Aicook, we've got about, looks like about 20 ounces of juice. And with the Breville, we've got about maybe 17 ounces of juice. So there's about three ounces difference, 3 ounces more made with the Aicook AMR 526 compared to the Breville. And taking into consideration that I accidentally spilled juice while I was juicing on the Aicook juicer, we're not really sure how much more juice we lost, but I'm guessing, an ounce. So we're looking at about, 4 to 5 ounces more juice than what we made on the Breville, and that's a pretty significant amount. There was a little bit less pulp in the Breville, but all in all, even taking the extra pulp that we had out of the AMR 526, we definitely got a larger juice yield. Looking at the color of each one of these juices, I think they both look very similar in color, so I don't see a huge difference in the oxidation between the two of them. Let's give them a taste and see how each one of them tastes. Okay, let's try the Breville juice first here. Yeah, nice juice, very flavorful. I love that combination. Apples, blood oranges, celery, and carrots, equal parts of each. Yeah, it's nice. Trying the juice from the AMR 526, equally as good. I really don't taste any difference in the two, between the two of them. So, stacking them head to head, juice tastes great. There was a little more pulp in this juice, but hey, if that's what you're looking for, I think that could be a good advantage. Let's take a look at the pulp itself and see if we see any differences in the pulp. So let me dig into each one of the pulp containers and see if we have any kind of a difference between the two of them. All right, taking a look at the pulp here of each one of these, there's just a ton of pieces of fruit and vegetable that did not get juiced. It looks like all the carrots were juiced pretty well, but the celery and apples, there are whole pieces of vegetable matter here that haven't been juiced up. There's a little bit of celery pieces in the Aicook, but it seems to have done a much better job, uniformly juicing the produce, and I think that's why we saw a much better juice yield on the AMR 526. So definitely something to consider there when we're looking at the pulp on the Breville compared to the AMR 526. Okay, now that we've juiced everything and taken a look at the pulp and we've taken a look at the juice, looked at the juice yield and looked at the pulp that's left in the juice, I think it's important to talk about the warranties that are available for each one of these juicers. For the Breville juice fountain, we have a 1-year warranty on it. And with the Aicook juicer, we actually have a 2-year warranty. So double the length of the warranty. And I did see on their information card that came with the juicer, if you send them your email address and register the juicer within 15 days of purchasing the juicer, you automatically get an extra 6 months. So potentially you could have a 2.5-year warranty on the Aicook AMR 526 compared to the Breville juice fountain. So all in all, taking a look at these juicers, I'm really impressed with the Aicook AMR 526 for the price point, for its size, for essentially being the same type of juicer as the Breville in a smaller footprint. It made more juice. It had a little bit more pulp in the juice. The noise is about the same, maybe a little bit quieter than the Breville, especially in the high speed. Also looking at the pulp in terms of how incomplete the Breville juiced the apples and celery, I really am leaning towards the Aicook AMR 526. For 50 bucks, it's a really amazing price point. And looking at over 8,000 reviews, positive reviews, no hate on the Breville. Obviously, it makes juice quickly, but for 3 times the price, and if I'm looking for a really serviceable, centrifugal style juicer to make juice quickly, I would recommend the AMR 526. So I hope this has been a helpful review video for you. I have links for both of these juicers down below. Let me know in the comments if you have used either one of these juicers, either the Breville Juice Fountain or the AMR 526 Aicook, and let me know your experience with them. I would love to hear about it, okay? So, until next time, I encourage you to make lots of juice, drink it all, and stay juicy. Cheers, my friends. That's a great combo. Cheers.